Hey everyone, so welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing pottery again and we're going to do some real talk. By that I just mean I have nothing better to do, so I'm just going to keep talking while you guys watch me mess around with my stuff. So first off, let me move my glorious money plant. Also, while I'm at it, I should show you the two other glorious plants I bought today. I have a problem. But, like I tell my mother, at least I spend my money on clothing and plants and not drugs. You raised me right, Mom. Okay, let me get those and then you can see them. Also, my apartment is a mess. I have a Christmas bed going on over there. Kind of moved my mattress into my living room because my couch is really uncomfortable. So I decided I wasn't going to move it back into my bedroom. So now I live in my living room, which is actually decently sized. So it's bigger than most people's studio apartments. So I feel yeah. Anyway, I have a Christmas bed. I haven't done my dishes in a day. There aren't that many, but I haven't done them and that's a long time for me. Also, I am in this state. You guys just have to watch it. And also, I've decided that this is my crafting hairstyle. So if you guys hate it, then too bad, because this is how I come now, like this. Anyway, so let me show you my other plant. Look at it! So this one is a Pelea Moon Valley. It's so beautiful. Just look at its leaves. Oh my gosh, I'm dead. Okay, so there's this one. And then I also got this one. It's a Hedera Helix, which basically I think it's just a variegated ivy, because you can see it has the light spots on the leaves, which means that the chlorophyll isn't as strong in some parts. That's usually what happens with variegated plants. So yeah, so glorious and I love it so much, and it's going to start vining and it's going to live all over my bookshelf and all over my apartment, and yeah, I have a problem. Anyway, those are my plants. Let me start on the real reason why everyone's here. The pottery. Okay, so my mom knows that I am messy AF. So she buys me these plastic table covers. Also, how is everyone doing? I am finally going back to working normal hours as of next week, so no more COVID hours. So Monday to Friday, so today is a Friday and I'm free, so I thought I'd do some filming. Okay, so I have my tablecloth down, and then you always need a jug of water of sorts. I couldn't think of anything else to put it in, so I had this empty jar and I just filled it with water. And I didn't have any other sponges except the kind that you use for washing dishes. This is a clean new one, guys, don't judge me. Okay, it actually might work quite well with the one side that's a bit rough. Then I bought two kinds of clay, and clay is such a good price actually. Okay, so I got super white stoneware clay. I have been using this one at pottery, and after you bisque fire it, it does go very, very white. So I have the super white, and then I bought this new one. It looks red. It's like a face brick red color, And apparently, when you fire it, it fires black. I know my pottery teacher wanted me to take some of this before lockdown, and I was like, no, I'd rather go with the super white. He was like, I don't give my students this one because it's really messy. So in the studio, we aren't allowed to use this black clay, but I bought some that I can use in my house so I can make as much mess as I want. So exciting. Then I have to commission 2 of these beautiful little bubble vases. I feel like, oh yes, and also this is a miniature opuntia. Yes, a miniature opuntia. So a miniature prickly pear. Look at it. It's so cute. My lighting's really shite, so sorry guys. But I got a commission to make 2 of these, which is really strange because I actually didn't come up with doing these ones so that they'd be commissions, but it seems everyone loves the ones with the little bubbles, and in all honesty I do too. They like kind of really cute with plants. So I have to make 2 of these. I'll use the super white to make those. Yeah, and then also while I'm at it, I also made this one a while ago with these bubbles, and I got this variegated string of beads, beads, and you can't really see it, but some of them are like slightly white. So yeah, I bought it for like $15 on Bid or Buy. So that's why it's so small. It's literally just a cutting that I bought, and let's hope it actually grows at some point. But anyway, let me like put a light on or something. I feel like that didn't help at all. So I really want to use this black clay, but considering that I have to do custom pieces, let's just use the white clay. Crap. There's my scissors. Yeah, I don't have a wire to wire this off, so if you don't have that, you can use dental floss. So let me go grab mine. Okay, so just grab some floss, and how much am I gonna need? I'm gonna have to make 2 pinch pots, so I only need 300 grams. Is that all? Yeah, okay. Ta-da! Isn't that like the most glorious thing to watch? Okay, so let's just close this up. Okay, let me move my camera closer so that everyone can see what's happening. Okay, so then with this piece of clay, you can't quite see it, but usually clay has air bubbles, and what you have to do is basically knead it to get the air bubbles out. Oh, I can't really do it because, sorry, that's how I'm gonna have to do it now. Oh, okay. Okay, and now I just spend the next couple minutes wedging the clay, which is basically kneading it to get the air bubbles out. And it didn't go very well considering the fact that I was doing it on a plastic table cover when I should have been doing it on a wet piece of fabric, but I didn't have one. So
Now I spend the next couple minutes trying to attempt to wedge on a piece of plastic. And yeah.
You usually want to use 300 grams for pinch pots. I am now eyeing it. Okay. This is 300 grams. Yes, it actually does look like 300 grams. This one is also about 300. So you beat the clay until you get it into a ball.
So now I spend the next couple minutes beating the balls into slightly rounder shapes. And then what you do is you take your thumb and your fingers on the outside of the bowl and you press your thumb into the center to make an indent in the clay. And you use the rest of your fingers to shape around the outer side of the clay. What you want to do is compress the layers of clay together as much as possible, and this will help with the whole process in the sense that you're removing the air bubbles. The air bubbles, if there are any in the clay or any cracks, by compressing it this way you're also compressing the cracks. But if there are any air bubbles in the clay, what happens is those air bubbles will then expand in the kiln and your pot will break, essentially. So you need to compress the clay as tightly as possible throughout this process. It's probably the most important part of it. And then what happens is you'll get like a dome shape from the clay, and you then use your second ball, do exactly the same method, keep compressing it round until you get a dome shape that's about the same size as the first one you did. So once you've created the two dome shapes, usually what happens is you'll create more than two, which means that by the time you've created more than two, the first ones you've made would have dried. But because I've only created the two, I needed to somehow dry them. So clay dries well with a warm hairdryer. You basically just take a hairdryer and dry the outside as well as the inside of the pots. Don't over dry them, just dry them enough so that they aren't completely moist to the touch. You want them to be slightly hardened because the clay will harden during this process, and you also don't want it damp. So you keep drying it until you get to a point where it feels a little bit harder and denser than it did originally. Once I was done spending 50 million hours drying my two domes, I take a sharp knife and I do what's called stitching. So you do a cross stitch on the edge/rim of the clay. So you want to do strokes in one direction and then turn the knife and do strokes in the opposite direction. So it does a crisscross pattern across the edge of the clay. And what this does is it helps to bind the two domes together. So you keep stitching it and stitching it and stitching it. Once you're done stitching, you want to take your damp sponge / wet sponge and wet the edge of one of your domes. You don't want to completely drench it, just so that it's damp. Then you take your other half and you join them together, push down, but don't squeeze too hard so that you destroy the two domes. Then what you're going to do is take your thumb and blend the edge of the two stitches together. And then you take your knife and you do the same cross stitch pattern on that seam, because we want that seam to become invisible. If that seam is still there, later on what happens is it will break. So you need to take your knife and cross stitch all the way across the outer edge on that seam. So now that I've used the knife to stitch across the outer seam, I take what's called a serrated kidney and I scrape across the whole outside of the dragon egg. And what this does is it just fuses all the clay together. We're weaving it basically. And you just keep scraping the entire outside of the egg with your serrated kidney. Once we've scraped the whole outside of the egg with a serrated kidney, we're going to go in with our smooth silicone kidney. And what you do is you wet the kidney and then you just use that wet kidney to smooth out the serrated edges you've now created on your dragon egg. And this just fuses all the joins together, makes the clay nice and solid. And this is basically the final stage before we allow the egg to harden. Again, if you're wondering why there's a marble block on my table all of a sudden, I realized that I actually needed to cut and weigh even more clay because I needed to create 2 pinch pots, which meant I needed to create 4 domes and not 2 domes. So therefore I had to cut another piece of clay off and create another dragon egg. And this took me about another 20 minutes or so to get the whole process underway, but it's exactly the same as the first time I did it. So my 2 pinch pots are now drying in my oven. And I decided I'm gonna do this one. Oof. Okay, so I decided I was actually gonna use this red/black clay and I'm going to coil a planter. So this is the base for my planter. Let's make sure it's the right shape. So while I'm doing this, why don't we have some real talk? Lately, well not lately, for a while, the story slash the idea of relationships has been a top priority slash thought process in my life. And I just haven't had any luck with relationships, in all honesty. I had like a really unfortunate one that almost drove me insane. Literally had a mental breakdown about a year ago because of it. Had to go on meds to try and cope with it. Had to take off work for a while because of it. And have had to try and overcome a lot of emotional turmoil from that relationship. There was a lot of belittling that happened, a lot of gaslighting, etc., etc. I won't reveal too much. And it was actually the best thing for me for that relationship to end. I mean, I started going to therapy because of it, and therapy is literally the best thing, guys. If you are having any problems in your life, go to therapy. I love my therapist. She's great. She just feels so real. She's not the kind of therapist that just sits there and looks at you. She kind of like interacts, and sometimes I've seen what looks like a tear form in her eyes when I tell her tragic stories of my life and how hurt I am, and when I sit there and I cry, she sometimes tears up as well. She feels like a real human being, and that's what your therapist should feel like to you. And if they don't, you need a new therapist. So anyway, went to therapy, and then I was in another relationship with someone who, in all honesty, I really thought I was going to end up with, because in my mind, he was like everything I was looking for in a human being. And like even now I still think that, but the hardest thing for me to have to deal with was the fact that like people are their own people and they have their own issues to deal with, and no matter how hard you try as a human being, you can't fix someone and you can't help them when they're in a mindset where they feel like they can't do something if you're around. I don't know if that makes sense. But yeah, so I was in that relationship and I don't have anything bad to say. I loved everything about what it was. I don't have any like bad memories. I mean, obviously we argued and had like a few fights, but yeah, that's normal. But anyway, so I haven't had much luck. And now I've just been in this mindset where I'm kind of like, I don't know if I'm ever gonna find anyone. Because I kind of feel like every relationship I go into, the person I'm with goes like all in the beginning. And I'm assuming that's what all relationships are like, but I'm just going from my point of reference. And like we're always like all in it, and then I'm like 100% in it, and then they're all of a sudden not in it, and that's kind of really hard to cope with emotionally. But yeah, I've just been struggling with like the idea of relationships. Like I feel like for me, I have given everything I possibly could to everyone I've chosen to love, and I don't know if there was anything more I could have done, and it still didn't work out. And now I'm kind of like, I don't even know what to expect from a future love life if that's what it's always going to be like, I don't know. How do you guys feel about relationships? Because it's hard. I don't know, I kind of hoped that like by this stage in my life, at this age, I would be with someone who is as in it as I am, and who's ready to settle down in the next like 2 to 3 years. God, even a few years ago I was expected to be married. Well, not expected, no one expected me anything, but I expected to be married and having my first kid at this age, and here I'm at 28, still trying to make sense of my life and my relationships and just everything. And then I look at couples and I'm just like, how do people find people that are willing to make life work with them? Like, I'm obviously willing to make a relationship work with someone who I feel I could truly make it work with, but it never seems like the person I'm with is willing to do the same. So how do you meet someone who's willing to make it work with you? Just my real talk moment for today. Okay, so clearly I'm wearing my dressing gown and I have zero craps to give. So it took a while for the dragon eggs to dry out to the leather hard stage in the oven. Also, I got some of the red / black clay on it, and this is what came from it. Oh, hold on, show you. Oh my gosh, it's so messy. So I made this planter for one of my new plants. I'm excited to see what color it fires. Oh, it's so soft still. Shit. And it's also really messy. Like, you just touch it and you are covered in horrendous red colored clay. So up until this point, what I've now done is used my knife and stabbed holes into the tops of the dragon eggs. You need to create a hole so that the air on the inside of the egg can escape. And now I'm basically just using a wooden spoon and beating the crap out of my dragon eggs. What you want to do is beat it into a shape that you want. So I needed them to be like a cone shape with a flat bottom, and that's what I used the wooden spoon to create. Yeah, it's quite a fun process. Get all your frustrations out. Okay, and what we're going to do now is I have spent quite a few minutes beating both of my dragon eggs into the shape that I want, and now I attempted to use a piece of dental floss to cut it, and it just wouldn't work. So now I take a serrated knife and I trim the top off of the dragon egg, and whoops, there it goes. And once I've done that, I use my hands to attempt to push the inside of the dragon egg into a smoothed surface, because what happens is after you've made the dragon eggs, the inside of the egg isn't smooth. You can still see not so much the seam of where it was joined, but basically you can see where you were stitching. So what you have to do is use your fingers to try and smooth it out. And if that doesn't work, you can always try and use maybe like a teaspoon, the back of a teaspoon, and flatten the bumps out. And if that doesn't work, you can always try and squeeze a serrated kidney in there to try and smooth it out. So at this point in time, I've probably spent about 20 minutes trying to smooth the inside of my first pinch pot. I ended up using the back of the wooden spoon to get in there. It actually worked pretty well. Compressed the base nicely. Remember, you always have to compress the base well. Then I just beat it into shape again if need be, and I just work the inside of it. And yeah, you can see me beating down the inside of the pot and scraping it out with my silicone smooth kidney. After spending about 45 minutes shaping both of my pinch pots, I am now ready to add my little stand out polka dots. So what I do is I take pieces of the wet clay and I turn them into little balls. And then I evenly space those balls along the outside of the pots and I stick them down. And now's the perfect time to do it because both my pots are still a little bit damp, so the balls stick better to the outsides of the pots. I finally added the last few balls to my second pinch pot and it's done. Look at it. They're so cute. I just check that all of them are evenly spaced and that everything's stuck down well. And then I do a quick cleanup.
And that, folks, is how you make a pinch pot. That was a process and a half. What time did I start doing this? Much earlier today, and I only finished now. Pepper. And now these will dry for a couple days. What I've learned is if you dry things too quickly, the little polka dots fall off. So you kind of have to do like a slow dry, which is a bit frustrating because you could just blow dry and then have it dry, but no. So what you do is you wrap these all in plastic. So you can just take like a shopping bag and wrap it around it if you really wanted to. Or what I tend to do is take cling wrap and I just cling wrap them. I find that's been working the best lately, and it's also the safest because I find like when you try and take these out of the bags and stuff, you can knock the balls off. But yeah, so that's what I've done today. It was quite a lengthy video. It started like 3 hours ago, 4 hours ago, and now it's dark outside and I'm tired. So I'm gonna go to like get ready to shower and stuff. But I hope you all had a great day and I will see you again soon. Okay, bye.